Welcome to the Growth Enablement Madness podcast, and I'm Jim Ward, your host, CEO of BrainSell, the growth enablement company. I'm absolutely mad about helping businesses grow and scale. And in this podcast, my team and I get a chance to talk shop with industry thought leaders about a variety of growth enablement strategies, stories, and technology trends. I'm happy that you're here, so let's get the growth conversation started. Well, folks, welcome to the Growth Enablement Madness podcast. So happy to be here. Thank you for all our listeners. Today's subject matter is a second episode on AI. We're calling it Understanding the Pillars of AI Readiness. So readiness is going to be key. Our guest today is once again the Tony Berry.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, there you go. Tony is our data guru. Some say czar, maybe. Czar is a new term we've come up with, but he's our data guru. But I also want to point out, Tony also owns, with his son, Jordan Berry, a company called Interloop. And so he's president, Jordan is CEO, and they are doing quite well in the data space, and Fabric being one of the key components from the Microsoft platform. So Tony comes to us with a great deal of expertise. And Tony, welcome. Good to have you again.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it very much.
What's new? Anything new?
Oh gosh, what's not new these days with AI, right? Every day there's something new.
So I'm listening to Bloomberg radio more and more, getting off the sports radio bandwagon. And, I'm hearing a lot of things about Microsoft, Salesforce, how much they're investing in AI. I heard this morning that Microsoft might have overinvested in some level.
I saw that.
Yeah. So tell me what's happening with the investments, why they're so important. What are each of them doing that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's all in the billions of dollars now, and you hit it on the head. And it's not even $1 billion; it's 80 or 100 or 400. And so, obviously, for me, this is starting to prove that clearly the tech is working, but it is still very capital intensive. But the race is on to kind of get that core technology, which tells me they are seeing signs of this being truly disruptive, and we're seeing that too. I know you're seeing it too, Jim.
Yeah.
This stuff is working. It's not easy, but it's absolutely working. And it is funny that you talked about the fact that Microsoft may have overspent. Yeah, I saw the same thing. They may be pulling back a little bit on some of their data center build out. I think DeepSeek actually helped with that because it's starting to show you may be able to do this a little bit cheaper now, which to me is exciting too as a consultant in the space, which means this may become more applicable and more affordable. So that part's quite exciting, but definitely time to get your feet wet though and jump in, because people, if you don't, I think you're going to miss out.
Well, I agree with you. And I think that for those folks in the market, our clients, our prospects, and those who we don't touch, it's the typical business story. It's the fast that eat the slow. If you don't get in and understand what the impact is for your business, you're going to be behind the eight ball.
Yep.
And in the AI world, in automation, efficiency, and scale, getting behind that eight ball is like a power curve. Once you're behind, there's almost no way of catching up to the competition that gets ahead of you. So that's my early warning sign to folks out there. Now, there are definitely pitfalls and things you need to consider. So the overview of this episode is we're going to talk about getting practical with AI that helps you start to think about this. We're going to share tips and best practices to effectively adopt an AI based around, key pillars of AI readiness. I think a lot of people have what's called right now AI euphoria.
Oh, good description.
Right. And so they know that they need to do it, but they just don't know what to do. And that's going to be some of the things that we help with, not only in this discussion today, but on our AI readiness capabilities and our audits to help folks to understand. So I guess I would ask you, what do you consider the 5 pillars to AI readiness?
Yeah, Jimmy, you hit that euphoria is so dead on. I won't name that, but was talking to a CEO just this last week, and he came and said, "I need to do AI," and it was like this frantic, "I need to do
Yeah.
AI," and I went,
Right.
"Well." Well, why? He goes, I don't know. I just know I need to do it because I'm seeing it all over the press. And what we talked about is, hold on, slow down. You don't just do AI. You have to think about it. There's no magic there. There's no easy button that you go push and all of a sudden, AI takes over your business and runs it for you. And obviously, I don't think any of us want that because it means we're not needed anymore, right?
Right.
Um, so there is a whole component of it, and we've kind of, as you mentioned, look, we're a Microsoft a purveyor of AI essentially. And so one of the things that we've tapped into is Microsoft has something called the five pillars of AI readiness. And it's near and dear to me because, and I know Jim, you and I talked about this a lot. All technology is an enabler, and AI is still an enabler. It's a better enabler in many, many ways, but also a little bit more dangerous enabler. And so you really have to do things correctly, and you get back to the people, the process, and those types of things, and tying that into your business strategy. Yeah, so the five pillars actually start there. What they say, the first one, you cannot skip it, is what are you trying to do from a business strategy standpoint, and make sure you understand that first. And ideally, once you have that business strategy understood, you start to think about, well, where can AI as an enabler help me with that? And
Hmm.
so we'll talk to that in a little bit more detail on kind of those clues that tell you AI is a good candidate or not. Then what's interesting is the next two pieces used to be, kind of process and then you pick your technology. But they say with AI, that's a little bit flipped. The first thing you need to think about, the second pillar, is now data and technology, because the one thing we do know for AI is the fuel for it is data. So the more
Hmm.
data you have, the better organized your data is, the better AI can reason on that. And so you really need to think about your tool set for AI and then the way you're going to organize your data. And that's the space that Interloop's in. So obviously we were really happy to see technology and data be number two. Then the third piece is the AI strategy and the actual implementation of those use cases. So that's the third pillar. And so that's where everybody tries to jump right now, is to that third pillar. But if you don't do those first two, it's the same thing that used to happen in the past. You're automating chaos typically, or CalPAS, there's a description of that.
Yep.
It's just AI does it faster and more thoroughly. But if you think about that, if you do faster, more thorough chaos, you get chaos cubed, or whatever you want to describe it. It just makes things worse. And
Squared.
AI will,
Chaos
there you go.
squared.
There you go. Square. There we go. And
Yeah.
then the last two, which I know we're going to get into in a separate discussion, is you got to make sure your organization and culture is ready for this, because it is different. The way it actually works, you got to make sure you do things correctly. And then finally, you've got to govern this. We've probably all heard one of the issues with AI is it can, go off the rails, it can hallucinate, and that gets into the governance. How do I make sure it does only what I want it to do? And so those are kind of pillars four and five.
Got it. Um, I think we should talk a little bit deeper about maybe the top three
I
pillars,
think
if
that's a
that
great
makes
idea.
sense.
Hey, Tony, before we jump into talking about
I don't think
the
I was finished with
first
my
three
sentence, by the way. I'll
pillars,
let you.
I have the power
Yes, you do.
of the microphone.
By the way, this
Um,
is a bot. I'm a bot today, so it looks like you turned it on.
just a quick question. So you said it's usually, right, we're talking to the CEO, they're saying we need to do AI, but they're saying we need to do AI. Typically, it's to like the leader of a business function within the
Right.
organization or to their IT department or whomever. So what are some tips for them to respond back to their CEO, like before we do AI? Right? How do we avoid kind of the chaos?
Right, right. And this is the part that is quite exciting, because this is where the tech is working, is stepping back and thinking now from a business standpoint. And a lot of the AI successes in those functional areas, so you're dead on. Is okay, let's say that I'm in the customer service area, and now I want to, from a business strategy standpoint, we as an organization, let's say we're in the manufacturing space and we get a lot of support calls on our equipment, and we don't want to increase our staff for that, but we want to increase essentially the frequency or the resolution time on our service tickets. And we want to increase, let's say, our NPR. So we don't want to hire more people, but we want to do a better job and we want to do it faster. Great use case. for applying AI. So that's saying, let's tie that to the business strategy. So let's say we want to reduce our cycle time by 10%. We want to increase our net promoter by 4 points. That's what our goal is from a strategy standpoint. Now, how do I do that with AI? Because I've got a very specific use case that I can now measure the results on. And interesting, now the organization gets used to it, and the ideas just start rolling around these ideas of where can AI make me more efficient as an organization that drives into some of those top line, often at an OKR level, right? They're going to be, we're going into a new market, or we got a new product, or we need to service better. Those are those kind of high level key initiatives of an organization. And now AI becomes that enabler, taking that functional experience and now starting to automate it, in many ways.
So it's clear you need to have a business strategy.
You have to.
Right? So, and it could be by department. And it's clear that AI isn't just necessarily you just adopt it. You need to have a reason for bringing AI in, that it's going to bring you scale or an ROI of some form, and it certainly can. And I'm literally talking to people, senior level folks who say, yeah, we need AI. And it's an interesting conversation, and because I have to ask, well, where do you need it? And then they
Yeah.
don't know where they
Yeah.
need it. Well, we just know we need it, and so that's where we come in as a Sherpa or a guide, to help them, with their business strategy and how to apply AI.
Yep.
We'll talk about this later, but we have an AI readiness audit that we do for free, and we come in and we take a look at it. Are you ready? And that gives you a sense of where you can start. Yeah, and so I was thinking about purpose built versus, I guess I would call customized. I read Oracle is really focusing on purpose built AI, which has its absolute place. And then there's more customized solutions. Can you just describe the difference of those two?
Yeah, and it seems like they're all kind of going down this path. Microsoft has a similar strategy. Salesforce, to me, it's again where you're going, Jim. Figure out what you want to do. So there are some, what I would call low code platforms where a business user can start to configure, some of these agents. So, that would fit in more of the purpose built. You can sometimes pre-build these too, which organizations are doing. And so that kind of fits in that purpose built. Custom build is now where I'm going to take, something like ChatGPT, and I'm going to put code around it
Mm-hmm.
and make it very, very specialized to my business. Both are very applicable, but it's that AI readiness again, right? If I'm a
Yeah.
if I'm a business user and I'm trying to build one of those low code, purpose built, or use those, I still have to apply it to my business. It doesn't magically, know your business and go solve those problems. It may give you a quick start or a head start on it, but you want to make sure that you're doing that last little bit of configuration that makes it unique to your business. But custom built, some industries have some very specific needs where now a custom built or tuned Copilot in our case would be a very good solution. And again, that's that readiness and that planning to
Yep.
figure out which of those two paths make the most sense.
Right.
Get a guide. Hire someone like BrainSell to help you on that path to really decide which of the two paths is the right one.
In my opinion, just so the folks know, from my perspective, a great start to realizing what AI can do is to perhaps look at purpose built.
Mhm.
And you mentioned earlier, I think you said NPR, but it was NPS. I think you were referring to a NPS
Oh
score.
yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I meant
NPR, yeah,
NPS.
that's
Yep,
that station that, as I like
that's
it, a
the
lot of
radio
it's, yeah,
station.
it's really
So
good, but they don't do any AI. Anyways, so NPS scores, so if you had an OKR, objective and key results, right, you might have one on a customer experience. And we want to improve customer experience. And what does improve customer experience do? Well, it should improve revenue opportunities. But then you're going to have some key results, and what are the things that are going to
yep,
drive
you got
that,
it.
right? And so, as an example, one of the areas that I see, um, we're a Zendesk partner, as an example, which is a help desk ticketing software, and they have brought in some great AI. So for customer experience, the ability to deflect or allow customers
Hmm.
to work the way they want to, rather than having to speak to a customer representative. I know I used to be very attached to having to talk to a human. Actually, today I don't want to talk to a human. And so, they have AI that can answer questions via a bot that has, access to the data that answers all those questions. It may have ingested knowledge bases. It's learning along the way as well.
Yep.
So it's a terrific way to start off and get a real scale that turns into a return on investment. So what how do, and when we get in there, what do we do with our readiness? Can you explain what we do with the readiness audit?
In terms of just kind of what we're doing there, or
Yeah, what we're doing there
yeah,
so
yeah.
that
So I
people.
mean, yeah, readiness is going to look at kind of down each of those pillars, right? Do you, and you hit on the head, Jim, do you have your key strategic initiatives? OKRs are a fantastic example. Do you have those in place? Do you know what it is you're trying to accomplish as a business? So we'll kind of look at that. And if not, that's what you need to do first. We'll then take a look at the what we call the data state. This is the second pillar. Do you have your data in a place that it's ready for AI? Is it organized? Is it in one place? Is it available? Exactly what you were just describing. If you're using Zendesk for your customer service, does the bot have access to that, but
Right.
maybe not access to some other systems? So that's that data readiness. Then you get into the use cases. And so we'll kind of see, do you have your use cases defined? This is the part, this is that process mapping that we probably all, oftentimes don't want to do, but you got to do it because that's what actually tells the bot what it needs to do. Service is a great example. Customer calls in, comes in through an email instead of through the chat. Well, how do
Yep.
you know that customer already has an open ticket and they're just emailing to get a response or a status on the ticket? The last thing I want to have is a new ticket, because now they have to respond to two, and they're just coming into the company. They don't care what channel they come through, nor should you. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an example of kind of those use cases and those rules, which would say, hey, bot, if you see an email come in from a customer, first thing you do is go check in Zendesk to see if there's already an open ticket for that customer. And if there is, then respond back to that in their preferred channel. That's that third step of readiness that we'll go through. And then the other two are is the org ready, and you have proper security and governance around your data. So that readiness will kind of score you on all five of those pillars in terms of where you're at. And kind
Yep.
of like any sort of checkup will tell you where you need to focus your time.
Right. And again, folks, this is a free audit that we're providing because we really like doing this. We want to be first and the fast mover and helping our clients and all of you out there actually really get a return, not just be
Yep.
sold on something. And the reason I use the Zendesk example is it has the ability to be scored, right, and benchmarked. So you can see the improvements. So NPS score that you referenced, you can see how you've improved your NPS over time. And you can take your CSAT scores, for example. So it's a good benchmark that you're
Mhm.
measuring against and seeing how it's working. And then you tweak. Yep. Anyways, that's my perspective on as that example.
Yeah, and back where Sarah was going, the functional areas are usually where your quick wins are at. So, sales, there's certain things, marketing, there's certain things, customer service. Don't forget the operations group, that's starting, especially if you're in manufacturing, where you've got a lot of logistics things that could probably be improved, just through some simple automations. Don't forget finance, managing,
Finance, yeah.
payments, receivables.
Yeah.
Those are often pretty mature functions that need and benefit from this type of automation. So those are
Yeah.
some very quick wins. Sometimes the initial goals get too lofty too. I want AI to figure out how to grow my revenue by 10%. Well, that's not solvable, right?
No.
There's a bunch of other things underneath that pin into that revenue strategy. So try and get them down to a little bit more succinct functional use cases to start with.
Great. Okay, so we've spent a little time talking about pillar one of our AI readiness, which is strategy. Let's dive into the second pillar and explore that a little bit more, Tony, around tech and data. And when I think about pillar two, the question that comes to mind for me is how trustworthy is your
Hmm.
AI? And the answer is, well, it depends on your data,
Yep,
right? So
absolutely.
talk a little bit about where businesses fall flat when it comes to tech and data when before they're implementing AI within their organization.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to go back to Jim, the euphoria, which probably I'm going to borrow that if you don't mind. I think it's perfect. I think the publishers are all trying to convince us right now. It's the classic: my tool's better than their tool.
Yep.
You
Right.
need to buy my tool, or you won't be successful. And this is the same thing again. I would argue right now that all the tools are still in that kind of, they're post the idea stage where they're actually now practical, but none of them I would put in the, better than all the rest category right now. So what we're often advising is if you've already made a decision on kind of your core platforms, if you're a Microsoft shop, look at the Microsoft tooling. If you're a Google shop, look at what Google's doing with Gemini. If you're using AWS already, look at the AWS tooling. Oracle's not getting in the market, et cetera. So again, if you're an Oracle shop, look at some of the Oracle tooling. The thing the publishers won't tell you is they're all copying each other and they're all reacting and they're all kind of spending on it. What they don't often tell you is that, hey, all of those tools need the same fuel, right? That fuel is the data, and that's the data that's in your organization that is probably not in one central place. It's probably not organized for what AI needs. And so just because you pick a tool, it's not going to solve that data issue. So you do need to dig into that and start to think about, how am I going to establish what's called your data estate? How am I going to get, let's say, Jim at Zendesk, and they've got another CRM tool, and they've got a marketing tool, and then they've got their back end ERP. How do you get all that data together and then organized in a way that the AI can decision off of that? But also, sir, I think where you were going, make sure it doesn't get access to things it doesn't need for the use case that it's
Right,
trying to solve.
right,
And that's a concept called grounding, which is where you now keep the bot. I think of it as you put fences up, so it can only do certain things and it can't go over the fence. And that's where these bots start to become very successful. And if you take that time to get your data estate organized, this is why we're big fans of something called Microsoft Fabric. Other people are probably used to the word Snowflake, Databricks, that all the big cloud vendors are getting into this. Then the work is getting that data all pulled together and organized in a way that AI can decision on it. And the way you organize that data is a little different than you do in an operational system. But that's another piece where get a guide to help you on that, that knows how to get this organized. And then these AI agents will be extremely successful. Where we tend to see them not be successful is where people don't take that time to get the data pulled together.
Right.
yeah. And what about the cleanliness of the data too? Like I think about CRM systems, right, where you're relying on, no offense to the salespeople, but to
Oh,
put
stop it.
data
Yeah.
in the system and it's not necessarily consistent, or, they may have inaccuracies and things like that. So how do you get your data at a level that's clean enough, and avoid and continue to keep it clean?
Oh, and so this is where it becomes a bit meta, where AI helps AI. So if you get that data into one place, let's say I bring it into Microsoft Fabric, which is the part we use. Now you need to do exactly that. I need to organize that data, and part of that is cleaning it. Well, guess what? There's a co-pilot that's trained to look at messy data, because there are certain things that are common, right? Addresses are not complete.
Right.
States aren't spelled out right. Addresses aren't actually using the correct postal code, or the city is spelled incorrectly. That a co-pilot is great for, because it can say, "Hey, I can correct this for you." So I know what this needs to be, or I have a good idea, or I can't correct this because it's so messy. And it can throw up alerts and start to take action on that. And that's why you want to bring it into that data state. Yeah, because if you don't clean it up, the bot's going to go try and find an answer, and it will answer with incorrect data. And
Right.
so that's that key. We call that curating your data. You're going to organize it, you're going to curate it, and then that's where your AI agent comes in, is on that curated data.
Great. All right. Shall we jump into the last pillar we're going to talk about
That's the fun one.
today,
That's the
which is
fun one.
pillar 3, AI
Yeah, jump.
strategy and expertise. Given that I know AI's been around since what, the 50s? So it's
Yeah.
not that AI is a new concept, but it's just become more mainstream in terms of leveraging it within organizations. So are there new processes or new expertise that is essential when companies, get together and start developing that AI strategy?
Yeah, and this to me is where it starts to get really exciting. So you've done your homework, you know the strategy, you got your data in place, it's curated, it's ready for AI. Now you start to think through, Jim, you gave a perfect use case. What's the use case now where I can take that data and I can do something with it? And this is the big advancement over really this year and late into last year is this concept now of agent capability within these AI bots. And now they can not only answer back questions, but they can make decisions and then finally do things. And so this is kind of the new way of doing automation now, where you can essentially now have an assistant that's literally sitting on your shoulder, and it's been told, "Hey, when that email comes in, first thing I want you to do is read it. And should that go to sales? Should it go to marketing, or is it a support issue?" And now the bot's deciding the next bot to call. This is where it gets fascinating. And now it's calling the sales bot or the marketing bot or the customer service bot. And then it's actually doing things like updating records in CRM, cleaning up address data, letting marketing know that, hey, this is a warm lead. Let's drop them into our deep nurture campaign. Or it's telling a sales rep, hey, we've got the tone here says they're ready to buy. So I want you to follow up with them immediately. Or service, where this is the one we gave before where it's that service data. So now that's those use cases that you lay out that you want to now start to AI enable. And what's nice is they're very measurable. You can see what it's doing. You can manage what it's doing on top of that. And what we find is once you get to that point in an organization and they're ready for it, the ideas just start flowing, especially from those subject matter experts within a functional area who know their pain points.
Yep. Do you think that organizations are going to start coming up, right? Like there's a new role within the company focus specifically on AI strategy, or do you think that it's up to each of the functional leaders within the company to, sharpen their axe and really become the AI strategy expert within their function?
Yeah, with some of what we're seeing a lot of right now is a concept of a chief data officer in some form or fashion, usually within the IT group, that's making sure that data is organized and curated and governed. But then we're also seeing that the most success comes from right now when you push that AI responsibility down into the functional area, and you at least have a subject matter expert who's working, with the technology team to implement it.
Yeah.
Because the technology team just won't know the subject matter area, right? They won't be the expert. And that's where this starts to get fascinating because now your subject matter experts who know the pain are working with the technology group to actually go implement these, and it becomes kind of a new motion in a lot of organizations. That's that org change that you have to think about. I personally am not seeing a lot of success where somebody in IT is told, okay, you're our AI expert, go build all our AI, because they just don't have that functional expertise. It's that collaboration between the IT function and then the functional area.
Great.
Um, so many thoughts, my gosh.
I
I'm
know.
not gonna I'm
That's
not
the
gonna be
exciting part about all this,
so
right? No,
yeah,
no lack of thoughts. Yeah.
I'm not gonna be organized in my thoughts right now, which is if you were inside of my head, you'd see this little circus and monkeys and giraffes and stuff like that. But so there's this domino effect. You adopt AI, and then you got to make sure that your data is governed properly. You even have to, in the example of CRM, for example, you may not want free form text because it becomes very
Yep.
difficult to manage. So you have to go backwards and make sure you clean up all those things. Um, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how we're using AI. I'm not going to be specific because some of it is secret sauce for us and as a competitive company in the marketplace. But for example, we had to do, so we wanted to do some research on a massive number of emails on tone, words, capture words, and things of that nature. And we employed our CTO, Kevin Cook, used Copilot to do all of that work to find that and provide the reporting that we needed on those that a human just can't handle that kind
Time.
of
Yeah.
massive number.
Yeah.
We're also designing internally first churn prediction. So based on a variety of sources of data, the ability to predict churn of customers ahead of time so that the client have the ability to keep and make changes and pivot before they're gone. So those are some of the examples that we're using. I thought I'd give you some real life. Um,
Yeah,
It's fun.
and
Yeah.
with that example, sorry to interrupt you, Jim, but it's a great
Again,
also a great example of how in order to do this, we have to pull data from multiple systems.
yes,
Hmm.
right.
So, right, we're leveraging our ERP data, we're leveraging CRM data, and we're leveraging marketing automation data for that churn prediction model.
So, anecdotally, I was listening again to Bloomberg. I'm kind of like I'm getting really hooked on Bloomberg, and they had two AI bots talking to each
Saw
other.
that.
Did you see that?
It's crazy.
And hopefully you'll remember because I can't remember parts of it. But they were talking to each other to make a reservation. It was an AI assistant to an executive, and it was a travel assistant or whatever who would help. And they were talking to each other to make this reservation. And then they turned on, hey, do you want to go to whatever that language was called that AIs have that we humans don't understand? Do you
Right.
remember what it was
Right.
called?
It's basically the inside AI. They're actually converting everything into what are called vectors, and so yeah, they went into basically discussing back and forth at the raw data level. Reminds it sounded a lot like the old modems when they were talking back and forth. It's
Exactly.
very similar. Yeah,
Yes.
so
It's
very
like,
very similar to that. It's a more efficient way of communicating data. So they decided, yeah, pretty crazy that the bots decided to
oh my
switch to a more
God,
efficient language.
so weird. And of course, the inference was the dangerous part is we won't understand what they're saying.
Correct.
If they're plotting against us, which I don't want to leave the audience feeling as though we're in deep trouble. We are. And
No,
no,
it's
no, of course.
exciting.
No, it's exciting, very exciting. Yeah. Hold on. My boss just walked in.
Yeah,
Um,
but
anyways, yeah,
that's a
so it
great
was
example of setting those governance or those fences, right? Because what you would say to both of the agents is do not go to a more efficient communication protocol. Always use whatever the language is. Let's say it's English that way, and keep a transcript of the dialogue.
And I'll just say this: I think for young folks out there looking and considering their careers going forward, this is going to have a big impact on what they choose because certain job markets are going to be impacted. It's going to be a domino effect. And I think Bill Gates has, five top jobs that will survive or where you should be at. And I'm sure that one of them is AI engineering or perhaps prompt engineering, things of that nature. But there's going to be an impact. So something for we won't do that as an episode, but I think it's something for folks to consider. Um, let's see. So, do you have any future trends in AI that business should be aware of right now? I know we've touched on a number of things.
Yeah, to me, the one that's really fascinating, and there's a couple articles, and they're talking a lot about the AI workforce, which is quite interesting. It's this idea of, and this was the first example of, is the bots talking to each other. That will be the future state. Is you're going to have your own, AI agent that
Mm,
knows your job, your function, and you're going to give it the authority to go do things on your behalf, and often that will be another agent that it's talking to and communicating with and taking action on. And that becomes really a fascinating world, right? Because they don't sleep. Eventually,
right.
they're not going to cost that much.
Yep.
And think of all the things. But what it can't do right now is it can't do some of the ideation and some of the really things that we do naturally well as humans. So if you think about as you work through your day, and when I saw a study on this recently, is at least a quarter of our day is spent on non-thinking tasks. It's just monotonous,
Yep.
mundane. Opening up your emails is a good example and going through them and figuring out which ones you need to respond to, which ones you need to table, which ones you want to throw away. Well, you can teach an agent to do that, and it starts to see your style and stuff like that. And then you can even teach it to start to do things based upon what it sees in those emails. Go update CRM for me, right? I mean, sir, you hit it on. I hate going in to CRM and copying and pasting and putting all that in. And it's all there in the email. So wouldn't it be great to have an agent say, hey, go update CRM for me with all this information and let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah.
And you start to get that type of capability.
Here's the thing that is interesting to me. Think of it this way. And this is why I say jobs, there's going to be a domino effect. Think of a bank of customer service agents. You've got 50 bodies handling it. Now think of a bot that handles it because that brain works simultaneously on multiple customer tickets or interactions. Suddenly 50 bodies are gone and you have a lot less for the human interaction. Here's the second part. We humans are, and because the AI learning models, we're helping teach them,
Hmm.
right? And so we're teaching them to take jobs a little bit. So you need to be prepared for that, right? You're teaching them the things that they need to know. I'm not trying to create and be a fear monger, but that's where it's going. So you need to be prepared for it. And for companies, it's very exciting. It doesn't mean humans are extinct. It simply means they need to pivot and shift.
Yeah.
But think about it from a company perspective and how it drives down costs and makes it more efficient for even the consumer cost wise. I think there's a lot of great things that are going to come out of it.
Yep. And some of the studies are saying that retooling puts us in places that are more rewarding and
Right.
fun, versus the mundane. And this has happened, I think, every industrial revolution, right? The mundane things start to get automated or replaced with technology, and then you move into more of a thinking and ideation area, which is where I hate to say this, where we're really strong as humans, and the agents at the moment are not.
Mm.
Um, so it starts to become, but that's that third or fourth and fifth pillar, is how do I get the organization ready for this? Because yes, the motion of work starts to change. And what you do on a daily basis is going to be very different, even a year from now, than
Oh
what it
yeah.
is right now, as these things start to, truly become enabled in these organizations.
Yeah. So even though it's been back to the 50s, AI is not exactly brand new. Of course, we all remember IBM Watson. I don't know what happened to Watson. I don't hear anything about Watson anymore. By the way, what happened to Watson? Do we know?
It's called now called Watson X, and actually Microsoft, or excuse me, IBM's starting to make some inroads,
Okay.
with some of the things they're doing there. So
Yeah, very interesting. But if you can think about my earlier example of a bank of 50 people, that's a purpose built for ticketing, and that the bot is
mhm.
giving a better experience because the answers are faster. You get to where you want to be quicker. That's been my preference, by the way. Is anytime I can
Yeah,
use a bot, I'm like typing to the bot and getting my and some of it's really good. I was dealing with Verizon recently on an issue, and
nice.
man, it resolved the issue for me effectively. Did Allie the bot help you well today? And yeah, 5 stars. So it was really, really, really good.
Too funny.
So
So I just had the same thing, Jim. I had an experience where I could go into the store. It was actually cell phone. I could go into the store and get a replacement for my phone. Or I said, maybe I can just go on and chat, and they'll just ship me one. Because I really don't want to get in the car. I really don't want to spend an hour. I really don't want to talk to somebody that can't solve my problem. And sure enough, within 5 minutes, I know it wasn't a human. It was a bot that took care of all that. I could tell it went and got confirmation, of the replacement, but beyond that, it was all automated. And you
so
know,
cool.
I
It's
sat I
so
sat on
cool.
my sofa and did it all. I went nowhere. So
So cool. Well, let's sort of conclude and summarize today and revisit the discussion. What is the one takeaway you hope listeners remember about AI, Tony?
yeah, to me, it's one, do it. Start to experiment, start to play, but don't expect an easy button. Do the hard work, which is understand your strategy, make sure you got your data organized, and then have fun. Because that third pillar is the fun one. Just don't skip the first two. Um, and really start to think about in your organization, where can this help? And candidly, hire a guide. This is new frontier. You need a guide to help you with that. So bring an organization like BrainSell in, to
Yeah.
help you on that journey.
So I want to humbly self promote ourselves here. That is what we do. We act as your guide. We have the ability to deploy custom, purpose built. We have the ability to do all of that. But most importantly, we have the ability to help you with your data governance, etc. Get you ready. I want to say that this is the time where we're going to talk about our AI readiness assessment and better understand your state of data. See if you're absolutely ready. Is there a link on our homepage
There,
that they can
yep,
get
you
to?
can take I'll call it a light AI readiness assessment. There's a link on our homepage. We'll also include a link in the episode description. But for, what we were talking about earlier in the discussion, more of a robust AI assessment,
Yep.
reach out to us and we can help get that scheduled. And you can email us at growth@braincell.com. And I will spell our company name correctly this time. Here's the test.
Let me just watch.
So it's growth, GROWTH @braincell.com. BrainSell is BrainSell.com.
Wow, excellent.
All right.
Well done. Oh my God.
Thank
So
you.
much better than the last episode with that one L hanging, the hanging L Chad.
Yeah.
So contact us, growth@braincell.com. And in that case, when they do that, do they get a human that assists them with that?
That's correct.
So you're not going to get a bot. You're going to get a human with an understanding of business who's been there. We've been in hand-to-hand combat. We are on the boots on the ground. So you're going to get that kind of a Sherpa and guide, not an academic. You're going to get business people who know
Real world.
AI. So I want to thank all of our subscribers. You can find this episode and all of our episodes wherever podcasts are found. I always ask Sarah, where are they found, Sarah?
Yeah, anywhere on your preferred listening. So it could be Spotify, it could be Audible, Google, even Amazon.
Since we're on YouTube, and I was just recognizing that I have a white shirt on today, which replicates the logo of the Growth Enablement Madness. I thought I'd take the form. Remember, does that look about right? So Growth Enablement Madness, we're mad about growth. Our purpose and our mission is to help companies grow and scale. It's as simple as that. Help you grow and scale. We do that through tech, consulting, guiding, etc. Also data analytics. Come to us, just chat with us. If we don't do it, we'll guide you to the right place. So growth@brainsell.com. There's a link on the website at www.brainsell, BRAINSELL.com. Thank you to you, Tony, for joining us today.
Oh, my
Thank
pleasure.
you, Sarah, my co-host, and Brian Anderson, who is our producer. Thank you all. We'll sign off with a song. What do you think? Should we sing a song?
Maybe next time.
Okay. We lose all of the subscribers, so we're going to leave that alone. Goodbye for now, and thank you. Look forward to our next episode coming up.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Growth Enablement Madness Podcast. I also want to thank Divinio Podcast for this episode's production and distribution. Finally, thank you to Sam Ward for our musical introduction and outro. Be sure to check out all of our episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. New episodes are available monthly and cover all important topics for growing and scaling your business. Until next time, this is Jim Ward signing off. Let's grow.